Okay. Um, as an immigrant of white heritage, white European heritage, I just would like to add my experience um, to this whole Black Lives Matter because every life matters. And the black thing is the biggest racism. It is ingrained racism. Um, Great Britain colonized every black country in the world and enslaved them basically, sold them for slaves um, as lesser human beings to be workhorses and nothing more. And I just wonder if that price can ever be repaid for that. I don't. I just wonder if any reparations can be made. And we only need to look at films of America in the early 60s. There's one classic scene where a young black man is being chased by policemen and they whip him so hard with their batons. It's just stomach churning. And then, of course, Billie Holiday sung about Strange Fruit, which we all know was black men hanging in the trees. And we've seen pictures of black men just burned, which is horrific. And yet, for some reason, the Ku Klux Klan feel that that is okay and acceptable. And there are all these groups, the Aryan race that exist in prisons that promulgate these views. My experience as a white immigrant is that my name was never pronounced correctly. And from a young age, I was subject to racial abuse. I was spat on. Um, as a young child, I cannot describe how hurtful that is. And I went inside of myself. I didn't say anything about it. I just put up with it. I don't know why. And, I'd get beaten up. Uh, I was constantly bullied at school. And even at secondary school, there were certain teachers who would not pronounce my name correctly. In fact, they almost seemed to enjoy getting it wrong. And it actually took me 11 years to get used to my own name. Um, and that's a wound, really, that I've carried from childhood. Um, a lack of trust, a guardedness. A term that is often used is hypervigilance. So racism is not just white people on black people, it's white people on any different society that is different from them because we're educated in this country to believe that we are the most civilized society on earth, but the evidence suggests otherwise. And you only have to look at the problems with Ireland, which went on for many years, the colonial attitude. Um, Protestant people were shipped into Northern Ireland to displace the Catholics who left to go to Scotland so that the powers that be in England could rule through a religious majority. And Great Britain, in its history, has played all sorts of tricks to get its own way. The concentration camps are actually a British invention. They were first invented during the Boer War in the early 1900s. So the whole culture of this country, historically, is racially biased. And in the short time that modern society has enjoyed the use of smartphones and the internet and faster communications so that people can actually be on the same page at the same time, that's really brought it into very, very sharp focus. And in my early days as a child in the early 1960s, I mean, I was 5 in 1962, and things have changed so much, and it's really for the better in so many ways in terms of sexuality, in terms of race, in terms of culture. I mean, it's widely known amongst gardening circles that the more you cross pollinate a plant, the stronger it becomes. Plants which are bred for their disease resistance are the results of cross pollination. So, in actual fact, if the people of the world cross pollinate, i.e., form relationships with each other, we actually make the race as a human race stronger. And we are all actually brothers and sisters on the planet, and it's only the socialization and the propaganda of the societies we live in that separates us. We are equal, we all feel pain, we all bleed, we all eat, we all need to visit the lavatory, we all need to wash, we all feel love, you know. So I just wanted to say something because I'd never really expressed this to anyone. I've never complained about it at any sort of level. I just grew up putting up with it. And this generation now is different because you complain about it, and rightly so, and bring it to notice and name it and shame it, and absolutely goddamn right. But my life experience, and there must be many people like me who, came to this country and felt like second class citizens. My father wasn't given English nationality status until 10 years after he came to this country. And he'd come from a country which had been colonized by the Nazis, and he'd spent 4 years in a prisoner of war camp. And my mother had suffered her atrocities as well and come from the same country. So migrants are always viewed as second class citizens anyway, because they're not from the the powerful race that is in place in the society to which they emigrate to. So, I mean, it's just such utter bullshit. But, the history of the world is full of such atrocities and viciousness. And I think it's always been obvious to me that life on this planet could be so easy if we all just treat each other as we would like to be treated. Then there's no problem ever, because people would just be kind and love each other. And John Lennon was absolutely belittled and ridiculed for saying that, and it's true. And it's confirmed to be true the older I get. And I cannot understand why there are certain nationalities and kinds of people that can hurt other people in the ways that they do. I really can't understand that. There's a sadistic, psychopathic tendency that seems to be ignited and brought to life in certain people, and it's not to be tolerated. And I think the next great evolution of mankind is actually learning how to cooperate, for the world to unify, not to separate, but to unify. And I'm probably not going to see it in my lifetime. I'm 64 years old. I have health problems, so I don't expect to get to the age of 80 anyway. And I don't believe that in the next 16 years the world can change that much. I believe it's going to take another 100, 200 years. So, to all you people out there who are talking about racism, who are insisting on human rights, please keep going. Please educate your children. Please educate anyone that you come into contact with, so that the world becomes educated, because education will stop racism. Education will stop any kinds of separation and alienation, because actually, when we take the time to learn, we actually find out that we're all the same. You know, People with darker skin have a darker skin because they lived under a very, very hot sun. People with a white skin have a white skin because we didn't. That's the only difference, you know. Um, so, end of. I hope that this hasn't offended anybody. That wasn't my wish to do so. I just wanted to bear witness to my own experience and add to the discussion, because I think it's just as valid as the big issue that's going on. But I would say that the big issue of black v white or color versus white, that's the biggest issue. But it's about difference. Anyway, that's my um, that's my version of things, and I'm in bed because I have severe back problems, so I've spent the day in bed. But this whole speech of mine really was prompted by Leanne Pinnock's program on BBC about race in pop culture, and yes, of course it's still here. Of course it's still here. I mean, it's ridiculous. The athletes we have. Dina Asher-Smith just won the 100 metres. She's celebrated as British, but I'm sure if she wasn't so successful as an athlete, she wouldn't be. Um, you know, people trying to dye themselves white. Michael Jackson being a prime case. I think that's so sad. He self-mutilated himself to try and fit in with the white culture. It is. It's tragic and it's sad, and it's so unnecessary. Wow, that was quite a talk. 11 minutes. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you for taking the time to listen. And as I say, I've not sought to offend anyone. I've sought to add a perspective and perhaps some information that is not widely discussed, but has become obvious to me through my studies in history and my experience as a human being on this planet in this culture. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch me.